When we think of a courtroom, we expect a perfectly balanced scale. You do the crime, you do the time.
Right, the rules are clear.
Yeah, the judgment is clean, and the outcome makes logical sense.
We desperately want the universe to have a clear cause and effect. We really just crave fairness.
But what happens when someone takes that perfectly balanced scale and just, throws it right out the window?
Chaos, usually.
Right. And that is the exact tension we are diving into today. Welcome to today's deep dive, where our mission is to figure out why a purely fair universe would actually be terrible news for all of us.
Which sounds completely backward.
It really does. So we're unpacking a fascinating sermon from Pastor Sung No at Praise Presbyterian Church.
Specifically looking at his take on 1 Samuel 27.
Yeah, and Pastor Sung No starts with a trick question for the congregation, one that we should honestly pose to you listening right now.
And that question is God fair?
Instinctively, you want to say yes, of course.
Right. But the sermon's core argument is that if God were actually strictly fair, well, none of humanity would survive.
Okay, wait, let's unpack this. Because usually we equate goodness with fairness. Like, if I work 10 hours, I expect 10 hours of pay.
Exactly, and that's the strict definition of justice, getting exactly what you earn. But grace is the exact opposite of that.
Receiving a gift you explicitly do not deserve.
Right. So by its very definition, grace actually has to be fundamentally unfair.
He uses that vineyard parable from the book of Matthew to show this, right?
Yeah, it's like a modern office where an employee strolls in at 5 p.m., sends maybe 2 emails, and the boss hands them the exact same salary as the person who's been grinding since 8 a.m.
Human resources would have an absolute meltdown over that.
Oh, they'd be facing a massive lawsuit.
For sure.
But that's the mechanism the pastor's really highlighting here. If heaven operates on a strict hourly wage, we are all completely bankrupt.
So humanity is that 5 p.m. worker.
Yes, receiving a payout based entirely on the owner's unmerited generosity, not our own merit.
Wow. And to prove just how deep this unfairness goes in the text, the pastor points to one of the Bible's biggest heroes.
Yeah, someone acting like an absolute villain and seemingly getting away with it.
Wait, we're talking about David here, right? Because we usually treat these biblical figures like ultimate moral role models.
Usually, yeah. But in 1 Samuel 27, David is terrified of King Saul. So instead of praying, he literally defects to enemy territory.
He moves to Gath, which is Goliath's hometown. That's insane.
It's like the CEO of a company immediately defecting to their biggest rival the second the board threatens to fire him.
That's a great way to put it.
And it gets much darker than just corporate espionage.
Oh.
Yeah, to gain the trust of the local king, David slaughters entire villages of men and women. Then he lies about his raiding parties just to cover it up.
Oh my gosh, yet instead of being struck down by lightning right then and there, David still goes on to become the greatest king of Israel.
Yep.
So what does this all mean? Am I supposed to read this as some kind of Machiavellian masterclass in ruthless political survival?
Not at all. And that's the psychological trap the pastor is exposing.
Okay, how so?
Well, the reason he chooses such an extreme example is to completely break our human mental model of transactional morality.
So the text isn't a moral guide?
No, it's a showcase of God's stubborn faithfulness. It proves that grace isn't something David earned by being good. It remained despite his complete moral collapse.
But hold on, if God just ignores David's lies and literal war crimes, doesn't that make God a completely corrupt judge?
Right, if a human judge lets a murderer walk free just because they're favorites, we demand they be disbarred.
Exactly.
And that is the massive tension this theology creates. But the sermon argues God didn't abandon justice or, sweep the crimes under the rug.
The punishment still happened.
It did. It just fell on someone else.
Wait, if a judge lets a murderer go because a different, totally innocent person volunteers to take the fall and go to jail, that's still a corrupt justice system. How does that solve the problem?
Because in this framework, the judge himself is stepping down from the bench to take the sentence.
Oh.
Yeah. The sermon describes the cross as history's greatest act of unfairness. The sinless Jesus takes the full weight of the punishment.
While the guilty parties, David and humanity, receive the grace.
Exactly. The scale of justice is still technically balanced, but the weights were swapped.
So if we're all walking around with this completely unfair free pass, what stops someone from just living recklessly? If the tab is already paid, why not just do whatever you want?
It's a natural question. But true grace doesn't give you permission to be reckless. It captivates you.
How do you mean?
Well, the pastor concludes that once you realize you've received this wildly unearned, unfair love, You are suddenly responsible for showing that exact same uncalculated love to the people around you.
So it demands a transformation, not just a transaction.
Precisely.
That completely flips the script. But it leaves you, our listener, with this thought. If we genuinely internalized how deeply unfair the grace we've been given actually is, how might it completely dismantle the way we judge the people who wrong us today?